Welcome once again to Commander by Danon. A few weeks ago I did a video on building a mana base in Commander. The video did pretty well, and I got a few comments asking for me to do a similar video on other parts of my checklist. So today we'll be talking about removal and interaction. Also, and I know it's annoying to keep hearing this, but statistically if I don't ask you to like and subscribe, the video gets fewer subscribers. To better understand what I'm talking about, we have a checklist. The checklist is not the end-all be-all for building a commander deck, but it can help you, especially if your deck is struggling. You've been board wiped and your deck cannot recover? You probably need more card advantage. Unable to cast your spells? You probably need more ramp or lands. Opponents keep overwhelming you? Did you remember to include a couple of board wipes? Commander decks can be very complicated, but it helps to start with a checklist. Something like this: 50 mana sources, usually split between 37 lands and 13 pieces of ramp, 10 pieces of card advantage, 8 to 10 pieces of spot removal, 2 to 3 board wipes, 2 pieces of graveyard hate, and 1 sudden I win card. So, like I said, this video will cover interaction. We'll go through several types of interaction, and what to keep in mind when you pick them. We won't really be discussing budget, because there are budget options and non-budget options for all kinds of interaction. For example, Counterspell is about $1, while Mana Drain is close to $40. They both cost 2 blue and counter a spell, but one can be put in a budget deck while the other can't. Yes, Mana Drain is clearly better, but is it really 40 times better than Counterspell? No, not really. But before we get to our deck list, a quick word from our sponsor, Ultimate Guard. The Return to Earth Boulder series is unique in that they are made almost entirely of renewable resources, rather than plastic. And lately, Ultimate Guard has been printing these not just in solid colors, but with artist print, like the new Squaros series. As part of a set, you can call upon all of the Justice League to protect your commander decks, like this one, featuring the Flash. Pick yours up today at your local game store, or order it on Amazon. Link down below. Oh, one more quick announcement before we get started. I'm currently streaming with my son over on Musings by Danon as well as Twitch. It'll mostly be Final Fantasy XIV, but you're more than welcome to pop in and talk about Commander. Honestly, about half my streams are talking about manga, anime, or Commander. For the most part, Commander decks have a plan. The core of your deck is trying to accomplish the thing. If your thing is casting lots of cantrips to flood the board with drakes, like a Talran the Sky Summoner deck, cards that stop you from casting lots of spells every turn, like Rule of Law, are your bane. Your deck also wants to swing out with an army of flying creatures, so Ghostly Prison is also annoying. So having ways to get either of them off the board is something you should be thinking about when choosing your interaction. Obviously, nobody knows all 60,000 Magic cards by heart, so I don't expect you to know them either. But while playing your shiny new Super Friends deck, an opponent plays the Immortal Sun, and your deck has no artifact removal. I don't blame you for not knowing that a card like the Immortal Sun exists, but now you do, so you may want to include a few ways to remove it. That being said, Commander is a social game. Sometimes your opponents can do something nice for you as a favor if you remove something that is messing with them. Perhaps you only have a Heroes Reunion in hand and have drawn nothing but lands the last few turns, thanks to another opponent running Narset Parter of Veils. Now, you could kill her, but that would mean your other opponents would draw a bunch of other cards as well. But if they promise to help you draw cards and leave you alone for a couple of turns, then maybe a deal can be struck. Politics is a very important part of Commander. Anyway, back to discussing interaction. I've broken down interaction into a few different subcategories. Let's start with one of the more controversial ones, shall we? Let's get the second most hated form of interaction out of the way. What's the most hated? You'll have to wait for that one, dear viewer. When I first got into Commander, I was warned not to run a ton of counterspells. You see, counterspells are a one-for-one interaction piece. Let me give you an example. You counter someone's creature. Not a Craterhoof or a Blightsteel Colossus, but a regular creature. You just traded your counterspell for their creature. That's a one-to-one interaction, which is fine in a game of one-on-one Magic, but not in Commander. The reason why is because this is a multiplayer format. Your opponent is down one card, as are you, but the interaction hasn't cost your other two opponents anything. They're now up on cards against you. And while this may be a good enough reason to be careful when you're picking targets for your counter magic, it's not a reason to avoid running counterspells altogether. There are cards that end the game. I call them Sudden I Win cards. Approach of the Second Sun, Cyclonic Rift, Thousand Year Storm, Craterhoof Behemoth. These are cards that allow one of your opponents to win or create so much value that the game is basically over. These are the types of cards you want to hit with a counterspell, but they're not your only target. There are times when your opponents want to remove a key piece of your combo, or maybe board wipe when you're sitting in a superior board state. Counterspelling then is perfect, as it can lead you directly to the path of victory. There's a subtype of counterspell known as a stifle. Rather than countering spells, stifles counter triggered and activated abilities. If you have someone in your playgroup who loves winning with triggered abilities, a stifle effect or two may be worth running. Yes, you can stifle planeswalker activations. Or, if you're feeling really mean, you can stifle a fetch land. Of course, you could be the type of player who loves counterspelling someone into oblivion. In which case, have fun, but you'll want to ensure you're drawing tons of cards every turn. Cards like Archmage Emeritus or Archmage of Runes are going to help you keep your hands full enough to keep up with that plan. Counterspells are broadly used because they can stop an opponent from winning the game, but I consider protection cards to be a subset. A card like Heroic Intervention, Boros Charm, or even Archangel Avacyn can protect your board from a board wipe. There's always Teferi's protection, but if budget is a concern, there are several cards that ensure your creatures have indestructible until the end of turn. Now, if you're running an Aristocrats deck, you might not care if your creatures all get blown up. In fact, I've won games of Commander due to someone else board wiping. But most decks are not Aristocrat decks, so if you have a creature-based deck, having a few cards to protect your board might be a good idea. Okay, now we get to what most people think of when they hear the word interaction. Spot removal comes in many categories, and we'll be going over each of them here. But to start, I wanted to talk about spot removal that can take care of anything. Assassin's Trophy, Capsize, Beast Within, Chaos Warp, Vindicate, Generous Gift. These are always great cards to run. No matter the permanent type, it is removed from the battlefield. To me, these are the best kinds of removal, and when I'm building decks, I always try to include them if they're in my color identity. And budget, of course. Spells and effects that remove enchantments or artifacts, or both, are entirely color dependent. Blue and black can't do much against artifacts, other than bounce them if they're in blue, and black doesn't have a lot of enchantment hate, but it is getting more as time goes on. Many times, the most hated card on the battlefield is an enchantment. Most of the best stacks in the game are enchantments or artifacts. Go to EDH Rec and look at the saltiest cards in Commander. The two saltiest cards in the game are Stasis and Winter Orb. You can lock out a game with Solemnity and Decree of Silence. And, in an earlier example, I cited how the Immortal Sun shuts down Super Friends decks. I've seen it happen. And when you realize your deck is completely shut down by an artifact, nothing is worse than realizing that you cut on a braid for a tutor. So, if your color identity allows it, I'd recommend adding at least a couple of these to your deck. White has the best single target creature removal in the game, bar none. Turn 1 planes, I can now exile any creature I want. Not destroy, exile. It is gone forever. Oh, you use Satoru Umezawa to ninjutsu in a Blightsteel Colossus? Swords to Plowshares. Congrats on your life gain. White is great at removing all kinds of permanents rather than just creatures, while black's entire identity is removing creatures. Sure, it can take out planeswalkers, and there are a few enchantment removal cards, but honestly, if your deck is running a ton of creature spot removal, why aren't you just running more board wipes? Frankly, I'd rather run 5 board wipes than 5 pieces of creature spot removal. 2 or 3, sure, because there are often times where removing a single creature from your opponent's board helps you out. Certain commanders are problematic, and you want them in the command zone and not pointed at you. Looking at you, Kalia. Many times, there are multiple things that need to be taken care of. Most spot removal spells take care of one thing, going back to that one-for-one trade. But there are plenty of cards in Commander that take out more than one target. The command spells are prime examples of this, but there are more to consider. The problem is, most of these are more expensive than single target removal. Not necessarily in a dollar sense, but in a mana cost sense. But that doesn't mean they should be ignored completely. Honestly, I'd run Cryptic Command more often if it weren't too pricey to be in budget decks. One thing I like to include in most of my decks is flexible removal. I mean cards that give you options on what to destroy rather than cards that only target specific permanent types. While not as powerful as cards that can remove any permanent, they do offer flexibility. One of my favorite cards printed in recent years is Fracture. Other than creatures, planeswalkers, enchantments, and artifacts make up the most annoying permanents out there. Abrade is another one of my favorite Magic cards. Not only can we remove annoying artifacts, about half of the top 100 commanders can be killed by it. A lot of people run smaller commanders these days, so 3 damage is enough to take them out. I try to include at least 3 to 4 pieces of flexible removal in all my decks, based on color identity. And you thought counter spells were controversial. Now, I'm not talking about mass land destruction. Those cards belong in high-powered or CEDH, and you should expect them to be there even if you hate them. No, I'm talking about single land removal. Cards like Pillage or Cleansing Wildfire are great for taking out annoying lands. I don't care if you tutored up Field of the Dead and it's a key card in your Landfall Aristocrats deck. I'm blowing it up. Oh, you saved months to finally afford a Gaia's Cradle? Pillage. Having the ability to remove annoying lands is right and proper. Board wipes are something I categorize separately in my videos and when I'm building decks. But I figured they deserved a mention in this video, especially with all the one-sided wipes that are out there. The ability to destroy everyone else's creatures while leaving yours alone is game-ending, at least in some scenarios. A well-timed Cyclonic Rift can win you the game, while a Ruinous Ultimatum sends your opponents back to the Stone Age. Every dragon deck I've built for Cute Stuff features numerous board wipes that take out non-flyers. But even board wipes that hit everyone are great in Commander. Sometimes you're behind on board state and need a chance to catch up. Other times, board wipes help you close out the game. I've won the game on the spot with the Meat Hook Massacre. Like removal, flexibility is important when it comes to board wipes. The ability to destroy all artifacts and enchantments is something that white and green are capable of. Though, with infinite mana, Capsize becomes a board wipe all by itself. And it hits lands as well. I did want to make a quick mention about which color has the best board wipes. Some people think it's white. White does have some efficient and low mana board wipes. Wrath of God is the standard. 4 mana, destroy all creatures, they can't be regenerated. Farewell is flexible and exiles multiple types of permanents or even graveyards. However, I have to give it to black for having the best board wipes in Magic. Indestructible creatures are a problem with board wipes. A problem perpetuated by Avacyn and other white effects. But black has Toxic Deluge, Black Sun Zenith, Blasphemous Edict, Mutilate, Nuclear Fallout, Cloud Kill, and the previously mentioned the Meat Hook Massacre. Because there are numerous black spells that lower the toughness of creatures on the battlefield, thus getting around indestructible, black has the best board wipes. Which brings me to the end of the video. What's your opinion? What are your favorite board wipes or pieces of interaction? Leave a comment below. Thanks for tuning in. Once again, a huge shout out to my editor Cute Stuff. I couldn't make these videos without her. If you'd like to hire her to edit your own videos, she can be reached at cutestuff.edits@gmail.com. Link is down below. If you're looking for ways to support the channel directly, you can head on over to patreon.com/Danon. You can have a video made or just ask for help building or tuning a deck list. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons. Waffles, Jiraiya, Muffins, Marcus, Brett, Roxy, Alix, Borgi, Naswin, Conga, Aaron, Chris, Robert, William Pye, Kazaris, Booksu, Patrick, Naffy, Noodle, Tiz, Art, Richard, Devon, Sint, Boom, and Freya. You guys are awesome. I post new Commander deck videos every weekday, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of new videos. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again next time on Commander by Danon.